Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being with us. I'm Sidney Katz, Council President for this year of the Montgomery County Council, and I represent the residents of District 3. I'm delighted that you're joining us once again on Zoom for our lucky 13th business briefing. The purpose of this business briefing is to help local businesses and nonprofits navigate through our new economic reality. And I'm so very glad today to be joined today by two outstanding guests, Kelly Leonard, who hosts for Montgomery Community Media's Small Business Network, and Catherine Horster, who's the owner and operator of Nothing Bundt Cakes in Silver Spring. Our guests will discuss the economic impacts of COVID-19, as well as how local businesses are contributing to the reopening of the county's economy. They will then take questions from our Zoom audience. You may please send your questions to the chat box on the right of your screen. And before we start, I'd like to once again thank Susan Kennedy, who will be moderating this briefing. She's moderated every one of them, and she does a marvelous job. And with that, Susan, could we please begin?
Thank you so much, Mr. President. It's been an enjoyable ride. I can't believe it's already October. We've been doing this for several months now, and we're learning a lot along the way and have had some terrific guests with terrific information. And we're going to start first with Kelly Leonard. Kelly, tell us a little bit about, and this is kind of a loaded question, what are you hearing from businesses out there right now?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for opening up this venue and this dialogue, because I think it is super important. We are just at a really pivotal point in our community, and economic development certainly plays such an important role in really helping to reopen the county. And so as the host of the Small Business Network, I feel like I'm in a unique position where folks have reached out and shared a lot of their questions and concerns about, sort of where do we go from here and what are we experiencing? Quite frankly, I'm hearing a lot of confusion. The beauty of this region that we're in is that we are sort of multifaceted and we've got so many jurisdictions, and there's a lot of cross-pollination when you think about just the movement in and around the county and the region. And so there's a lot of confusion, I think, around, okay, well, what phase are we in? Because I might be a resident of Frederick, for example, and then I come to Montgomery County and, maybe Montgomery County is a bit further behind in reopening. And so it's like, okay, do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Is there a limited number of people that can be in my storefront or in my business? What is that number? So I think there's mixed messages that a lot of people are hearing, and that in and of itself lends to quite a bit of confusion.
I'm sure it does. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more when we get on a little bit later in the show. Catherine, you are the franchise owner of Nothing Bundt Cakes. We talked a little bit before the show about how wonderful your product is. What have you had to change as far as your business model goes since the pandemic hit?
So we've been fairly lucky. My business has always been a takeout only. We do have a storefront where guests walk in, make their purchases, pick up their orders. And we never fully closed. We never reduced our hours. We looked at it, how can we be as consistent as possible? We think that that's what people need and want, as well as the joy that cake brings. We did close our lobby for a few weeks right at April into May, and had to very quickly learn to do, as many restaurants and food service industry businesses did, curbside, only taking orders over the phone. We moved a lot to online orders. We were already fairly well set up with online ordering, which helped us a lot. But that transition came at a very busy time during the bakery. May is a super busy month with graduation and Mother's Day and teacher appreciation, and so it was a real whirlwind trying to make those changes. Those were the main things we needed to do, as well as you just don't know what's going to happen, right? We cut our schedule very quickly and then realized, oh, we're actually staying busier than we thought after the initial 2 weeks of fear. And so then you're adding staff back on, and all of this happening while trying to set up a curbside option, trying to ensure everyone, especially your staff members, are safe and not worried to come to work if that's, and the option to stay home if they needed to or wanted to. So it was a whirlwind.
Right. And first off, thank you all very, very much for being here. This is always an interesting conversation, as Susan mentioned. But Kelly, to your point about that it's confusing about the various areas, it's beyond, it is certainly confusing, but then it gets beyond that because someone that works in Frederick or works in the district, they're coming back to Montgomery County as well. So COVID does not know borders as far as what is happening. So if you go to the movie theater in Frederick or wherever, then Montgomery County hasn't opened the movie theaters, but people are bringing that concern or from the COVID experiences. So that in itself is a problem. And Catherine, to your point that you're a franchise deal, and of course your cakes. That if you can look at me, I enjoy your cakes very much as well. But I guess part of it is because people were staying at home and are staying at home more than they ever were. That they will have dinner at home and therefore will come and buy something sweet to eat after the meal. But as a national franchise, your organization is a national franchise, right?
That's right. About 400 locations all over the U.S.
And are you hearing from others throughout? I mean, I know you don't talk to them every day, but I'm sure that there's some chat groups. Are you hearing from others where an area is doing better than we are or worse than we are? Are you hearing any of that and what they did in order to get to a better place?
Yeah, it seems to vary so significantly all over the U.S. There are still some of our bakeries that have their lobbies closed that are still only doing curbside. We started opening up our lobby in June after Father's Day, and it really depends on everybody's got a different experience, right? And overall, our brand is up growth-wise, sales-wise. We're up over last year, but that has come with pretty significant changes in how we do our business, a lot more sales straight to consumers and less business-to-business sales, as you can imagine, although that is starting to pick back up. But for bakeries who, are in a little bit more areas where there are more individual consumers, those seem to be doing better. Some that are, our Tyson's Corner Bakery, for instance, has mentioned to me several times, it's just quiet there. They were getting more B2B sales.
Sure.
And so, it's varying significantly, but overall our brand is up over last year.
Good.
Kelly, I have a question for you. I mean, it sounds like what Catherine is talking, it sounds like adapt and overcome is sort of the motto here for many of these businesses. And she sounds to be, pretty good on her feet right now. What about those businesses when it comes to, funding and capital and paying the rent? What are you hearing from folks out there? I think we have seen quite a few businesses sadly shut down during this.
Yeah, it's been interesting, even that navigating it really, times like this, I think communication is so critically important. Communication and relationships, if I can be honest, because you've got some organizations where because they have a really strong working relationship with their landlord, they have the ability to get some relief in terms of just being able to either get rent abatement and or some sort of reduction in their lease amounts. One of the challenges on the other flip side of that, though, are landlords making concessions where it's like, okay, we'll take a percentage of revenue in terms of the lease payment. But therein lies the challenge, because if revenue has dropped significantly, then that becomes an unpredictable number for that landlord to then be able to determine, okay, well, how do we pay our rent?
Sure.
And so I know that's a big piece for a lot of more traditional brick and mortar types of organizations, because One thing that we've learned as the business community, particularly for professional services firms, is we've had to build that new muscle around how do we work remotely. And quite frankly, many organizations have learned to work remotely quite successfully. So then it begs the question of, okay, longer term, what's the implication around vacancies in and around Montgomery County? Because once organizations have mastered remote work, what will that look like? Will they return to those spaces? Who knows? And so, yeah, therein lies the challenge.
Well, and I did want to point out that in Montgomery County, we have what we call Reopening Montgomery grants. It's for up to $5,000, and it specifically covers outdoor dining equipment, tents and heaters and things that are associated with outdoor dining. And there's still money available. So anybody who's listening, if you are interested in that type of grant, it's up to the $5,000. And I've had some people say, well, that's not that much. It is that much if you need it. Please apply for it. And the system is something that we want people to stay in business. And right now, you really need to make certain that as the weather is changing, the outdoor heaters are going to be extremely necessary to keep the outdoor dining available as an option for people in a longer way. I mean, obviously if it gets too cold and windy, I don't know if that'll help, but until that happens, this is an option. We want to be there to be an assistance to all, especially small businesses, but to all businesses.
Yeah, and I believe, Sydney, that people can go to the county website, to the business resources homepage for COVID-19, and you will find many other resources there for businesses, information that those folks might need, including that application for that funding is right there, and to see if you qualify. Yeah. And along those lines, Catherine, have you applied for any grant funding through the county? Have you needed to reach out for support?
I have not through the county. We did receive some funds through the Paycheck protection program, but overall, I've been really lucky to not necessarily need any more help. I didn't need any deferral or abatement on my rent. It was something we talked about at length, and that our brand kind of helped us discuss, but I have not. I've considered it, and that's something I hear a lot of in kind of things like this, business networking meetings, but it's not something that I have needed at this time.
Well, and I also wanted to point out that Andrew Friedson, who's a council member for District 1, I'm District 3, he's District 1, but Andrew has truly been a true champion of business in many, many ways. And he certainly is the one who reminded me to remind people about the recovery grants. But in addition to any of those types of issues, we want to hear from you. I mean, we want to know from everyone that whether or not what we're doing is working or it's not working. And then part of the problem is, Montgomery, the federal government gave $183 million, provided $183 million in care grants to the Montgomery County for till the end of the year because of COVID. Well, there's so many needs. I mean, we have people that, to Kelly's point, we have people that can't pay their rent in a business way and certainly in a residential way. We have people that can't have food, that don't have food. They literally every day line up for food in Montgomery County. So a lot of that money, which we've allocated, I think all of it or most of it, has gone to help people get through this crisis. It's truly a crisis, but we need to work together to get to a better place.
Yeah, and Sydney, if I could just jump in, that's been one thing that's really been amazing, extraordinary, quite frankly, to see is the way that we have, as a community, have really pitched in to help one another in terms of all the different nonprofits in the county that have been really filling the gap, particularly when it comes to providing food and food services to the residents here in Montgomery County, because it's oftentimes we forget, for a county as rich as we are, that we have a pretty significant population that goes without. And so I think it really is incumbent upon all of us to do what we can to just be supportive in terms of those in the county who are not, to be really, quite frankly, good neighbors. And if I could also give a shout out to Councilmember Friedson, I think he's single-handedly keeping the restaurants afloat in Montgomery County with all of his takeout. Oh my goodness, his Twitter feed is like a restaurant menu.
Well, he always puts on there that it's local, not low-cal. Is what, that's one of his tagline. I love teasing Andrew. He's a good guy in many, many ways, but he really is he's doing a wonderful job on Montgomery County Council, as all of my colleagues are. But he really is a very, very fine young man who has helped out, as I say, many businesses in many other ways as well.
Kelly and Catherine, you can chime in on this too. What are the thoughts in the business community about how the plans for reopening have been laid out? Do people feel like they've had the proper information on what they can and can't do? And if not, I know, Kelly, you mentioned some confusion earlier on. How can that be improved? Kelly, you go first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing, and I alluded to it earlier, is just communication. I know the county, it's pretty clear when we do the digging, the information is there and it's available, and it's very clear in terms of the do's and don'ts and where we are in terms of the phased in approach. The challenge is that, so many business owners, entrepreneurs are just dutifully trying to keep their lights on. And so to have to dig and find the information becomes a challenge, perhaps. While it should be top of mind for all of us, at the end of the day, again, when it comes down to prioritizing and making the decisions around, okay, where do I focus my attention? Is it, when we think about just personally the challenges that we're all facing around navigating COVID, around the fact that many in the business community are now sort of, in-home tutors for their children. And so we are navigating, there's so much swirling around in our heads right now. So to have to seek out the information becomes a challenge. And so I think the better we can be around just sharing those public service announcements, bringing the information to the business community as opposed to making them seek it out. I think the more we can do that, the better the information will be found and received by the folks in the business community.
Catherine, are you getting the information you need?
It's always felt, to be honest, a little convoluted to me. Just like Kelly said, it's you have to go digging for it, or at least it feels that way some. And I don't have much time to go digging, and so there's always tasks at the back of my mind as I'm looking on the website, looking through information and trying to, should I be scanning? Should I be reading? And I end up consuming more information from, things I see on social media posts, articles, things like this, as opposed to what I'm positive, the county's putting out. It's right there in front of me on the website. If I can find that, it's great. But oftentimes I can't. I have, probably as many business owners have, gotten used to looking at the CDC website every few days. So I've kind of learned to navigate that and figure out what information I need, where to click to find new updates, whatnot. But that's not something I've done necessarily from the side of the county, where I'm looking at the county website every few days. And that's probably something we should be doing, but it is a little convoluted, especially early on. I don't know if I'm supposed to be open. I really am not sure. And of course, I had to go digging for that information, and I did eventually find it, right? But it can be a little challenging to find.
So let me ask directly, what would be a better way to communicate with you or in other businesses as well? What would be if what we're doing isn't working, and I appreciate, it works, but it doesn't work good enough. What would be what would be a way that we could communicate more effectively?
So we've had, one time we had someone stop by and kind of check in on our mask usage and our social distancing guidelines. And it was very brief. I appreciated that they were doing that because it makes me feel safe. But could there be more of that where she's right there in front of me. I have someone to ask questions to. It feels a little intimidating when they're checking in, but once you
Right.
realize they're just there to help, and you know, I liked that. I was glad that they were there after,
Okay.
you know, the initial shock of someone's here to, you know, check your bakery for guidelines. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's always nervous. But so that, and then, I mean, email communication, I don't know that I'm signed up for the correct emails or alerts, as I should be, but email is always easy, especially when the headlines are there and you know this one's one I need to read and this one is one I can ignore.
That's
Yeah, and I think
valuable. Please.
Yeah, and I think, Sydney, that's a great question. And because different people receive information differently, I don't know that there's any one right response to that. What I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt is most people do not like let the day pass without that attached to their hip, right? Their cell phone. And so I don't know if we have or have created an app in order to push out those notifications in real time by way of an app. If there is one, I certainly don't know that there is one. And so maybe that's something that just needs to be better publicized, is that, hey, we have an app for that. And, you know, this is where you can get up to the minute updates around what's going on, who should be opening, how these different rules and laws and things apply to you. And so maybe it's that we're sort of customizing the interface where, hey, I'm Catherine and I have a bakery, so I have a storefront and I have X number of employees. And so it's, you allow me to customize my responses so that I'm only getting perhaps those alerts that are specific to me. I think as best we can leverage technology to assist the business community, I think it's going to be in everyone's best interest.
And also accessing through your local chamber of commerce.
Yeah,
I know most of these communities, there are local chamber of commerces, and reaching out to them to see if they may have some information that you're missing.
Absolutely, and they're a valuable resource and truly a wonderful partner for the county in these various chambers. However, not everybody, unfortunately, belongs to a chamber of commerce. They should, but not everybody does. And as an example today, I had someone who contacted me personally. I knew her personally, and she said that, you know, she was told that she had to send an email and she doesn't have a computer. So, you know, we forget, or I don't forget, but there are people that forget that we have people that are not in the email world and are not, you know, in the internet world, and they still rely on a telephone to get them to get their information. So it is, one size does not fit all, but we can do a better job to fit most. And I think that's what we need to do.
We do have a question that came in that I'm going to read, and we can get to that if we have time. We do have time. So this comes from Manish Arora. We are a small business and in-home personal care provider, and we serve hundreds of Medicaid patients in Montgomery County residents. I'm also writing as a member of Maryland National Home Care Association. State of Maryland has a minimum wage of $10.10 and a statewide reimbursement rate of $18.72 per hour for personal care services. However, as you know, the minimum wage in Montgomery County is $14 and going up to $15. It's getting financially impossible for small businesses like us to sustain, especially under increased healthcare costs we have to incur during COVID. I would like to request your attention towards looking into some supplemental income for Medicaid providers serving Montgomery County residents to offset the minimum wage cost in our county. That's an interesting thought.
Well, it is. And of course, we certainly always look into what we can and can't afford. Unfortunately, at this point, Montgomery County is in the position that we really cannot, we don't have the funds that we used to have. As much as we would have liked to, we realize that we're facing deficits, and that in many cases, our tax base from businesses and other people has eroded, and we don't know when that's going to change. So we're being very, very careful. That's why we had a continuity of services budget when we went through it a few months ago for the budget that we're now presently in, the fiscal year we're in today. And you know, we're very concerned about that the services that we provide, and we have to make certain those services continue to be provided. So as much as we would like, and I certainly will keep it in mind, and I know my colleagues will keep it in mind, but we just can't promise that we have that extra funds at this point.
Kelly, let me ask you, so many businesses have had to pivot during this pandemic, and we really don't know how much longer this is going to go on or how much longer this is going to look the way it does right now. Are business owners, are you hearing that business owners are accepting the fact that things may never be the same again? Are they okay with where they are right now with their pivots and just kind of trudging along as we go along here?
You know, I don't think we have any choice but to be okay, right? We figure it out. That's the wonderful thing when you think about the definition, the sheer definition of an entrepreneur is someone who finds a void and fills it. So we are problem solvers, and so we will get beyond this. The one thing that I want to piggyback on something that Sydney alluded to, and or that the question brings up. In my mind, is that one thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting about too is, so the unfortunate truth is that you have so many people that have been displaced from jobs here and around the country. However, that also opens up the fact that there's so much great talent in the marketplace.
I'm not sure I understand.
The challenge then, though, becomes that you've got, because we've figured out, we've mastered working remotely, and we've taken away potentially borders by which perhaps we can hire team members, we have to be mindful of the fact that what happens when, because the cost of labor is less expensive, let's say if I've got a person in Tennessee, let's say, who I can hire at $35 an hour, as opposed to $100 an hour of someone here in the DC metro area, am I going to then hire the person in Tennessee because I'm working remotely anyway? And so it doesn't really matter that the person is geographically outside of my region. So that's something that I would encourage the government to be thinking of too, is what's the implication there? The fact that folks will start perhaps hiring people because of the remote environment that we're working in, and because oftentimes we're looking at bottom line. How can we fill those resource voids by looking outside of our own marketplace in order to hire talent?
And we've seen that in an international way as well. I mean,
Yes.
this is, depending on the industry, obviously, but that's what we've seen. And so it's a huge concern. The technology is your friend, but it can also be a game changer that you didn't unnecessarily appreciate.
Yes.
Yeah, and Catherine, I would imagine obviously that doesn't really affect you because you are a full service storefront, but have your employees been affected? It sounds like you've been busy enough that you've been able to keep most folks on, but have you had to let folks go, rehire? What has that been for you?
We thankfully never had to lay off anyone. In fact, we've hired, several positions in the last few months, which is exciting. I brought some people on that had previously worked with me that had, been laid off at other positions. So we've been really lucky. It is very obvious to me as I've been hiring that there's just a lot more talent out there right now. Obviously, we knew that was going to happen, and we knew that people were going to be walking through our door way more often, starting about March 15th, 16th, saying, are you hiring? And we've been one of the lucky ones saying yes. But
Good.
so, we've kept people on. There was a time when I thought I'm going to have to lay off people,
Yeah.
but thankfully that has not been the case for us. We've been very, very
Good.
lucky.
That's great. We're almost out of time, but we do have another question. Are there plans to create more urban districts or business improvement districts in Montgomery County to assist with COVID-19 recovery? Have we spoken about that at all at the county, at the council?
Well, there's certainly, there's always, we've looked at it from opportunity zones and other ways. I don't know that it's strictly because of COVID. It's for the economy in general. And of course, we should always look to do that. Any community needs to make certain that we continue to be a community that changes to be in the positive, and that we have growth for the public. And we've seen that in many ways in zoning. I mean, there was a time that every zone was residential and this was commercial, and now we see so much more mixed zoning that that businesses and residents are in the same space. I mean, you know, the first floor is residential, is commercial, and the areas above it are residential. And that's going to be something that I believe is certainly going to continue to happen. But we need to be flexible, and we need to have those good, honest, open discussions.
Okay, well, we are just about out of time. One quick point. Jane Rediker from the Silver Spring Chamber gives a shout out to Catherine, and she says, thank you very much for being a member. Mr. President, I'm going to turn it back to you to close us out.
Well, thank you very, very much, ladies. I appreciate all of you being here today. And as I said, this is always a fast half an hour, and it proved it once again. You obviously were wonderful guests and terrific panelists, and we thank you. And if you or anyone else needs our assistance, we stand ready to help. Thank you very much, Susan, for all of your help as well. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Public trust. That is the currency that we have to be able to do anything that we do in terms of